Welcome to today's webinar. My name's Karen Bowness. I'm the Marketing Manager here at LiveHire, and I'll be the webinar moderator. Today we're here to talk about all things talent acquisition metrics. And the reason we chose that topic is because we're celebrating the launch of our Analytics Pro module, which is an add-on to our standard analytics module. So we're going to have a bit of fun with that. But first, let's kick off with our acknowledgement of country. We would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands on which we meet today around Australia and the elders past and present. We acknowledge the ongoing connection that Aboriginal people have to this land and recognise Aboriginal people as the original custodians of this land. Now I'd like to introduce you to our panel. First up, we have the amazing Kevin Wheeler, who's the founder of the Future of Talent Institute. Hi, Kevin.
Hi, everyone. Nice to be here.
Thanks for joining us in your evening. And we also have Jared Stuke, our Client Success Manager here at LiveHire. Jared's going to be talking to you about our Analytics Pro module and our analytics. Hi, Jared.
Hey, Karen. Hi, everyone.
Hi. And my name's Karen Bowness. I'll be the webinar moderator. And we also have Mal here. I'm not sure if I can't see him, but Mal here is our super guru of all things tech support. And he's here if there's any technical questions. Hi, Mel. Okay, so let's kick off with a little bit of housekeeping and then I will pass over to Kevin. So firstly, just reminding you that we ask you to ask. We encourage you to ask questions. We love questions. They make the session more informative for you. But we ask you to ask them through the Q&A box down the bottom, because being the moderator, it makes it easier for me to handle those questions if they're all in the one place. So please post your questions through the Q&A. We'll have plenty of time at the end for live questions, but feel free to ask them throughout the session. There will be a recording of today's webinar, and also I'll be sending out a copy of Kevin's slide deck, probably within the day, if not first thing in the morning. Next up, we have a survey when you exit the webinar that we just ask you to give us your feedback. It's a great way for us to be able to see future topics. We get suggestions for future topics. Also, if you'd like to know more about LiveHire or our analytics offering, it's a good place to tick the box there and we'll get back to you with answers. Our next event will be talking about recruitment marketing. We have the amazing Mark Puncher joining us to talk about all things recruitment marketing. That will be next month in October. And lastly, we've got some prizes just to make the session a little bit more fun and get you to engage with us. I've got 6 Uber Eats $50 vouchers. So to kick off that, just jump into the Q&A section and say hi to me, tell me your name and where you're from, and I'll give those out randomly. And then I'll ask you a few questions throughout the session just to keep things fun. Okay, this is what our agenda looks like. I'm just about to hand over to Kevin, who's going to talk about unlocking success with talent acquisition metrics. That will go for about 30 minutes. Then we're going to jump onto a LiveHire analytics user story. We've got the amazing Katie LePage telling us how they're using analytics at Infinite Aged Care. Then, as I mentioned at the end, we've got 10 minutes for live Q&A where we can ask all the questions you have of Kevin or our panel. So let's pass over to Kevin. I'll stop sharing, Kevin, and do your introduction. Kevin is the founder of the Future of Talent Institute, co-founder of ATC Events and Media, speaker, writer, strategic advisor, former global HR leader, and university lecturer. Kevin is one of the most prolific voices globally on talent acquisition, helping today's leaders anticipate and navigate the numerous trends that will shape the future of work. Welcome, Kevin.
Well, thank you for having me here. Happy to be here. And let me share my screen. And okay, can you see that?
Yes, we can.
So we're all set to go. So let's talk about my metrics. You know, metrics have been something that I've been, I guess, complaining about or trying to figure out how to do them better for pretty much my entire career in recruiting. You know, I think it's one of those areas that we've got this sort of traditional view of metrics, and I'm not sure it's the best view that we, or even the view that we should have. So I'm going to dive in and talk a little bit about what I think is wrong with the ones we have now, and what I think some good ones might look like. So start out by just asking you some questions and just say, could you answer these questions if you were asked these by the head of your company, by the COO, by anyone? Do you have a good definition of the skills that you need for key positions? And I mean those key critical positions that you have to fill in order to keep the company, really successful. I'm not talking about the ordinary routine sort of hires that you make, but those key positions. Do you really have a good, clear understanding of the skills that you need for those positions? And more importantly, even, do you have a pipeline of people with those skills that you can present pretty quickly to hiring managers? And do you have any insight into what's coming? What are the skills you're going to need in 6 months or a year from now? What's going on in the environment that might be changing in your company that's going to change the skill mix that you need? How long does it take you to present a qualified candidate? Are we moving internal people in the organization? And what are the constraints that you're facing and how are you dealing with them? And do you really know what those constraints are? Those things that are preventing you from doing things faster and more effectively than you're doing them right now today. So, I mean, I think these are the ultimately critical questions that every talent leader needs to be able to answer and answer without even thinking about it. They should be just part of how you work. And I'm going to talk about hopefully metrics that can help you to answer those questions. But let's take a look at, metrics in general. Obviously, measuring things is critical. If we can't measure things, we can't really do anything about it. And yet, I think the ones that we commonly use in recruiting are actually pretty ineffective. They don't really help us change our behavior or our processes or improve our success. If they did, I think we would have made a lot more progress in recruiting than we've made. But when I look at the metrics that we are going to talk about, they really haven't changed very much in decades. They're all pretty much the same, and we really have not made very much progress. What we measure gets what we focus on, obviously, and we need to focus on the right things, and we need to really make sure that they're answering those critical questions that we have. We normally kind of talk about the 3 most common metrics, which are not insightful, and I don't think answer any of those critical questions. And these 3 are cost per hire, time to fill, and quality of hire. And I think I could go to any recruitment function probably in the world, and they would be able to give me these 3 figures of some sort. And they probably have others as well, but these are the 3 most commonly talked about metrics in my experience. So let's look at each one of these in a little bit of detail and really find what their pros and cons are. So if we really look at cost per hire, which is generally the total recruiting costs divided by the total number that you hire. And we've already got a problem right here because, first of all, what are recruiting costs? Are they just the superficial costs of advertising and promoting the position? Or do these costs include your salaries, all the recruiting team salaries, your technology, the cost of that technology? Do these recruiting costs include the office space you occupy? These are all things that potentially should be and could be part of recruiting costs, but they're generally not there. So the figure we get, first of all, isn't even close to being accurate. And then the number hired, this is another problematic thing. Hired by when? So we've got all kinds of issues just around coming up with this cost per hire. And that's just to start. Following that, this is the most generic measure you could ever have. It doesn't differentiate between a really critical hire or a diverse hire. It kind of lumps everybody together and just averages it out. And we know that averages are really pretty much useless for making any actionable kind of changes. So for example, if you recruit the most difficult artificial intelligence expert for your company and it costs you a lot of money, does anybody really care? What they really care about is that you got this really great person on board. So, it doesn't differentiate those kind of things. It just lumps everything together. And then on top of all that is just its relative measure. What's good, what's bad, the cost per hire, says who? And I think I've done a lot of analysis of cost per hire over the years. And if you give me any particular position, let's just say HR generalist in your company, I can pretty much guarantee you that the cost per hire, it hasn't changed in years other than accounting for inflation. It's one of these things that it just hovers around a mean. So again, what good does that do? It doesn't really do any good. And then on top of all of this, to add one more thing to it, how much do you can control this cost? You don't really control these costs. These costs are the only ones you probably can control are things like the cost you spend on marketing or advertising. That's really about it. You don't control the cost of technology. You don't control the salaries. You don't control any of these things that go into cost per hire. So you're reporting something that you have little to no control over. And then ultimately, what does it help you to do? So the cost per hire is $2,000. So, what can you do about that? So it's a nice thing. You report that every year and everybody's happy because you've got a number, and HR is always desperately looking for something with a number to report because that makes us feel like we're business type people. But it isn't really doing much for us at all. Okay. So I think moving on to time to fill or time to hire, another really dubious measure. First of all, is it time to fill, time to hire? What time is it? We very rarely do we ever clearly define that. When is a job filled? And this is kind of one of these administrative black holes we go into. Is it filled when the candidate says yes? Is it filled when the paperwork is all completed? When is it done? It's very generic. It may take you a year to find the top, most expensive, most wonderful AI person in the world. And everybody's okay with that because you did it in a year, because you got a really great quality person. But then again, if it takes you a year to hire an ordinary routine hire, that's not a very good thing, right? So does it really differentiate critical hires from ordinary hires? Can you really control time to fill or time to hire? In my opinion, time to hire is pretty much in the hands of the hiring manager or the candidate. They're the two people that control time to hire, not you. You can influence it to some degree, but bottom line is, once you've presented a candidate, it's pretty much out of your hands. The candidate might drag their feet, the hiring manager might be on holiday. You never know what's going on or when they're going to actually do that. And again, you're reporting a measure, if that's how you're measuring it, that you don't have very much control on. So who controls it? When is it measured? And are you sacrificing quality for speed? And this is the biggest challenge I think we face, is that, just doing something fast doesn't necessarily mean it's good. And you need to take the right amount of time to do a good job, to analyze all the candidates you can out there. Now, I can argue that if you were a incredibly good and on top of it recruiting function, your time to fill a job should be very, very short because you've already anticipated needs and you're ready for it. And that would be wonderful. And I'll talk about a metric that aims to do that in a little bit. But the ones we're currently using don't really do that, and I don't think help us very much. Moving on to quality of hire, and this one is really one of my pet peeves, I guess, is this one. What is quality? Quality is kind of defined by however I feel like defining it. And I mean, that's the hiring manager, that's you, that's HR. How is quality defined? Now, if you have a very clear, well-designed definition of quality, then maybe you could come to some degree of measurement on it, but generally we really don't. Is the quality of hire the same for everybody? And I'll talk about that in just a minute. So how is it defined and who defines that? Is it based on performance, which often it is in my experience? And how is performance measured and how objective is that? In my experience, performance is one of these most subjective of all the measurements. Even KPIs and even goals are highly subject to manipulation. You can lowball your goals and perform beautifully on them every quarter, or you could have really difficult and challenging and useful goals and not make them and get dinged on it. Does that mean you're a bad quality of hire? So, I mean, this whole thing, basing things on performance is very dubious, in my opinion. How objective is any of the data that you're getting around quality of hire? And what does it help you to do? Again, it's awfully very generic once again. If you have, you can take, let's take a position and let's look at this diagram on the right here. And I've taken and said, these are 4 things that I think are potential components of a quality hire. They have knowledge, skills, and ability. They may have experience. They fit your culture, and they're motivated. And those are important characteristics, right? And together they would hopefully lead to a fairly good employee. So let's take a position like this AI expert that I've been talking about, okay? Well, hopefully he's got knowledge, skills, and ability. He probably may have some experience, but he probably doesn't have a lot because AI is pretty new. But does he have some experience? And how important is it that this person fits your culture? It may not be important at all if he's incredibly able to deliver what you're looking for in terms of AI output. And is he motivated? Well, hopefully, but again, how do you judge that motivation? Well, let's take a salesperson. You're going to hire a salesperson. Well, a salesperson, I think number one thing I would want is motivation in that person. I would want to make sure they're gung-ho about my company and how they're going to sell your product. But again, how can you really quantify that and measure that? Culture fit is probably minorly important for a salesperson, but knowledge and skills and ability and experience probably are more important. So if you go through this little diagram here and talk about it role by role, you can kind of hone in on what are the components of quality, but then you have a challenge of how do you measure those components of quality, and are those measures objective? Are they do they translate well between hiring managers, between departments, between functions, and so forth? And I think right now today, given the lack of analytics and data that hopefully LiveHire and other companies are going to help you overcome, is we don't have good data to talk about these things. We have lots of subjective opinions and ideas, but we don't have good objective data. So the generic measures are really of little value. And all those measures I've talked about, the way they're generally presented in a lump sum, this is our cost per hire and so forth, they're almost useless value. If I was a CEO, I'd say, these are meaningless to me. I don't know what this means. It doesn't make any sense to me at all. So I think you have to have 5 requirements for a good metric. It has to be objective. It's got to be generated from data that cannot be manipulated or is not based on somebody's opinion. And this is number 1 quality for a good metric. As soon as somebody's opinion or judgment comes into it, it's less valuable as a good metric. It's got to be within our control. It's got to be something you can significantly influence or totally control. If it's not, if you're on the margin or the edge of it, then why would you want to present something that you cannot control? You're going to get blamed for something that you didn't have any control over. It's got to be actionable. You've got to be able to do something with this metric. If you can't use this metric to do something better, it's not very valuable. I take cost per hire as a really good example. As I mentioned earlier, there's not much you can really do about cost per hire. There's a few things you can tweak, you can lower it by a few $100s, but you're not going to make a significant difference in cost per hire. So, what's the point of it? It doesn't really matter too much unless your cost per hire is ridiculously out of control. What you can do around it is very minimal. It's got to show progress over time. It's got to be trend data. And so often I just see point data. Our turnover is this or that, or our turnover has gone up or down. From what? From when? What's good turnover? What's bad turnover? How are we deviating from that? Is there some sort of measure that we're trying to aim for? And if you don't have that, then you really don't have a very good metric. As I said earlier, again, about cost per hire, it doesn't vary very much. It's pretty much within, a few points of a mean. So it's not much, it's not going to be very valuable. And then does it really tell leadership or you anything vital to your success or the organization's success? So I think any objective, any metric has to meet all of those requirements, or it's not a very good objective. And if we go back and look at the ones I've just talked about, I don't think they meet most of these. So there's two types of metrics, I think, efficiency and effectiveness metrics. And I'm going to present some that I think would be better than the ones we're currently using. So if we look at, I've got 6 measures, these, and by the way, I'm not recommending that anyone measure all 6 of these things or present all 6 of these things. You could, but you can choose which ones of these make most sense for your organization. So I think this is number 1. What is your ability to attract the qualified people to your company? This measure would be how many qualified candidates have come to your career site and then apply. This one I think is just really critical. This one really also measures how many of candidates are you able to attract from your competition, which is another good thing to look at. You can do something about both of these things. You can improve your career site. You can work with marketing to get more engaging content. You can figure out why people are working at your competition and how could you attract those people to your company. So if I saw this number, I'd say, wow, this is great. Okay. This indicates the efficiency and quality of your marketing, your communication efforts. It indicates how well you engage candidates and how well you appeal to their interests. So I think this would be a great one to put on your deck and throw those others out the door. Number 2, number of qualified potential candidates in your talent pool. I think every good recruiting function needs to have a pool, a community, whatever you want to call it, of candidates that you have already identified and qualified as potential hires for your organization. And I'd like to know, how many do we have in there? So if you say we need data scientists, okay, how many data scientists have you already identified, found, and know basically their qualifications that you could quite quickly attract and bring in for presenting to your hiring managers? That would be a wonderfully useful metric to have. And given the current automation tools we have, it should not be difficult to do this. It measures the efficiency of your sourcing function and how good your talent community is, how well you communicate, and how well you engage that talent community. So again, another really useful metric in my opinion. Number 3 is application to interview rate. How many job applicants did you receive compared to the number of candidates that you invited to interview? So if you're receiving a lot of applications that are being rejected, that don't lead to an interview, your job descriptions aren't very good, your marketing is not good, your sourcing is not good. It tells you right away that these are things you need to really work on in order to make sure that you have a very few number of bad job applications for a position. It really assesses the efficiency of your screening process, and it really identifies how well you've identified the skills and the competencies that you're trying to attract for these roles. How well you understand the hiring manager is also part of this. So this is another really good and objective measure. Interview to offer ratio. Again, how many candidates who you interview receive a job offer? This really, to me, gets down to the crux of, number 1, how well are you or the hiring managers, in effect, interviewing people? How well are you discriminating competencies and skills that are really, really needed for the job, as opposed to those that people might think are actually needed, but end up never being the ones that are critical? And how many of us has gone with great candidates, we thought were great candidates, to a hiring manager, and the manager says, no, they're not qualified. That's because we haven't really worked with a hiring manager well enough to thoroughly understand that position. So this really evaluates how good your interview process is, or your screening process, your assessment process, and whether that assessment is interview or some sort of testing. It indicates how good that is and how well it's actually working, and how well have you defined those job requirements and how clear are those? So again, another one that I think is good. Candidate Net Promoter Score, and this is about satisfaction. And we all talk about candidate satisfaction, and we do very little about it. This is the number 1 thing that never is improved. And as long as I can remember, it's been bad. This metric measures how satisfied a candidate was with the entire recruitment process. And you can obtain this through surveys, you can do candidate questionnaires, you can do all kinds of things that can help you to determine how well the candidates are engaging or happy with or satisfied with the whole process they've gone through in getting recruited. And then lastly, for this section is diversity hiring. And what percentage of new hires have come from diverse backgrounds? And this again tells you how well the recruiting function's doing in promoting diversity, inclusion, attracting diverse candidates. It gets back to the marketing piece. It gets back to the whole communications thing that I've talked about all along. So if you took any 2 or 3 of these and really focused on them, I think you could go a great way in improving the efficiency of your recruiting function. Well, let's talk now about effectiveness. And I've got 4 measures here, and I think these are really useful and important ones. And by the way, sometimes the effectiveness and efficiency metrics kind of overlap, and that's okay. I'm not that concerned about that. What I'm really concerned about is that you have, at the end of this, a few good metrics that really make sense and really help you to improve your recruitment function and what you do. So let's talk about time to present. And this is my favorite one. And there's a saying that if you lived in a utopian world, you would be able to, as soon as the hiring manager gave you a requisition, you would say, here is a qualified candidate within an hour. And the hiring manager would say, perfect hiring. Okay. Now, none of us are ever going to get to that utopia. I understand that. But the closer we get to it, the better we're going to be. So I say the amount of time from receiving a requisition until you present at least a certain number, you can determine how many that is, to the hiring manager. This indicates, first of all, how well you as a recruiter have really understood the job and the requirements of the job, and you've assessed and screened candidates to those requirements successfully. It indicates you've got a really good sourcing process, a well-designed talent community. And there's one more I didn't put here, which I should have. It also indicates how good your relationship is with the hiring manager, how much that hiring manager trusts you and is influenced by you and listens to you. So this one could be the granddaddy of all the metrics, to be quite honest with you, because this one really sums up everything I've talked about in one metric. That, you present somebody to a hiring manager and they get hired. That would be utopia. Okay. Moving on to candidate diversity ratio, which kind of gets at the last one I mentioned before, but how many diverse candidates get hired? Before, it was just how many do you have in your talent pool? Now I'm saying how many of them actually get hired compared to the total number of hires that you've made. And this really demonstrates your effectiveness in fostering a diverse workplace, really shows that you're putting the pedal to the metal when it comes to hiring the right people with the right diverse backgrounds. When if your company has a target to hire diverse candidates, which I hope it does. The third one is offer to acceptance, and how many job offers are accepted by the candidates. Okay, this is a huge one as well. Measure effectiveness of your whole process. If you have attracted a candidate and gone through all this assessment and screening and interviews, and you make the offer and they turn it down, something is really wrong. Somewhere along you have not done your job in qualifying that candidate. This should be a very rare occurrence, but and this is why this rate I think is really a useful one to track. And if more candidates are starting to refuse your offers, you can immediately do something about it. So it gets into my thing about being actionable. And that's what's so important. And then the fourth one is how engaged are the candidates with your organization? And this kind of gets back to the satisfaction one that I talked about in the efficiency side. How much did they engage with your career site? How long were they on your career site? Did they use your chatbot, assuming you have one? How long from the initial application to the final offer, how long did that take? Okay, this measures the effectiveness of all kinds of stuff. You can track this through Google Analytics. I'm sure you can probably track this through the tools that LiveHire is going to start showing you. There's all kinds of things where this can be tracked, and it's really a critical one as well. So just kind of to cap everything up, I think you should just develop a set of 4 or 5 key metrics, hopefully a section from the ones I've presented, Talk to stakeholders, including hiring managers, and get any of them that need to be defined or to have benchmarks. Make sure you've worked with stakeholders to define those so you're all in agreement. Make sure you have a way to gather good objective data, and make sure they're actionable. You can turn the results into action. You can do something about it. Avoid metrics inflation where we have 100 metrics. I see some functions that have 30 or 40 metrics. I mean, if you want to have those for your own personal internal use, I have no problem, but don't present these to senior leadership. And get those metrics that help you to get better, remove constraints or improve your process. This is really the most critical thing. To frame your metrics to answer important questions. What question is this metric the answer to? Is it something important? To who is it important? When is it important? Why is it important? Who cares about this? So these are just really, really critical ones that you need to understand and frame. Here's a few I'm going to present that are augmented emerging metrics. These are kind of futuristic. They rely on AI. I'll go through them quickly. AI obviously does and will have a huge impact on recruiting and how we measure what we do. It can definitely provide more objective data. It can identify patterns that are not easy for humans to see. And it'll enable you to do much more objective measurements and correlate things like whether productivity is really related to skills and experience or not. We don't really know that now. We make assumptions, but we don't have data. We will always still need human judgment. We'll always need human decision-making, and we always need to understand the context and situation. I'm not saying that AI is going to automatically do this. We'll still need humans, but it can really, really help us. So AI predicted job match score predicts the alignment between a candidate's profile and the job requirements. I'm going to go through these really quickly, and you can look through these later when you get the slides. Predictive candidate quality score. How likely is this candidate to succeed in this job? This is something we've always been trying to get. We can now get a pretty good idea of this from a whole bunch of data that we can gather now. Offer acceptance prediction. We can actually give a probability score on how likely it is that a candidate's going to accept an offer. We can measure how likely they are to stay with a company. This is one that's been around for a while. We can actually measure candidate retention likeliness pretty easily. So in summary, stop using your subjective, generic, ineffective metrics. Just get rid of them. I don't want to see them anymore. Define your terms clearly with numbers. Use only objective data-driven metrics that you can monitor and that you can do something about. And when able in the near future to use AI, make sure you use it. I hope this has been enlightening. I hope you've learned a little bit from it, and I really thank you for your time. You might want to pick up a copy of my book that came out earlier this year. I talk more about these metrics in there and many other things, including about a new model for talent acquisition. I have a free weekly newsletter that you can subscribe to here. And again, thanks so much for attending. I will stop sharing now. Back over to Karen.
Thanks so much, Kevin. Thanks for sharing your insights with us. That was a great presentation. I will share the details of Kevin's newsletter link so you can sign up for that in our follow-up email, and also reminding you I'll be sharing his slides as well. So that's all good news. I'll just share. And also I wanted to remind you, we're still giving away our $50 Uber Eats vouchers for the next round of winners. If you could tell me what your favorite metric was that Kevin shared, that would be amazing. Be a moment. Here we go. Can you see my screen, Jared?
Yeah, I can. Thanks, Karen.
Okay, over to you. Thanks, Jared.
Thank you. Thanks, Kevin. LiveHire offers a comprehensive suite of reporting and analytics. Specifically, we provide a number of options for you. We provide traditional data extracts in spreadsheet form, CSVs, Excel files. We provide embedded analytics on the jobs dashboard. But where we start to add real value is our analytics module. We consider it best practice. Our clients tell us it's a game changer. It includes numerous pre-built dashboards with the ability to filter on hundreds of different candidate, job, and activity data points. Many of the metrics that Kevin covered off, particularly around graphics with time and trend data rather than sort of singular point data. Our Analytics Pro is a brand new add-on module which provides the ability for you to build your own custom dashboards to build out to some of these things that Kevin has been talking about, or what data points are important to you, your management team, you managing the performance of your own teams. And it also, in Analytics Pro, provides access to reporting APIs to connect to your own data warehouse tools. So if you need to pull data in Power BI, for example, then we can link with that and you can report in there. Rather than me just sort of walking you through our reporting options, I've pre-recorded an interview with Katie LePage from Infinite Care. Katie's currently traveling to attend the Internal Talent Awards tonight. So we recorded this earlier, but yes, we'll play that video now. Thanks, Karen. Karen, I don't think there's any sound.
Sorry, guys, just fixing it up.
And we're up and down the eastern seaboard with 17 facilities that welcome all of our residents, and we have just under 2,200 employees now. And yeah, I head up the internal talent function with 8 of my colleagues to recruit all across our 17 facilities and our head office at Bundall down at the Gold Coast.
Thank you for that background. Can you describe how Infinite Care uses talent analytics to support your decision-making?
Yeah, so, you know, being a talent leader in the internal space for coming on 20 years now, to be honest, I've always used data analytics and, you know, the story behind the statistics of how we're performing on a month-by-month basis to showcase not just about how we are doing as a function, but also to have a bit of a health check on a, you know, a monthly basis around our timing and an experience and sort of where are we getting our candidates from and our hiring, you know, performance. So for me at Infinite Aged Care, it was very easy to work with LiveHire and really optimize their analytics dashboard, which to be honest is probably the most mature and advanced analytics dashboard that I've experienced in my 20 odd years of working across ATSs. It's very important for us in a head of talent or a talent leadership role to be able to very quickly get in real time data across our hiring insights, our demographics, diversity, sourcing, effectiveness, to really sell back into our business the value proposition that an internal talent function can have. And, you know, whether or not your audience is procurement or legal or risk or finance or even the HR team, the data can tell very different stories to what those audiences want. So we use it pretty much methodically on a monthly basis. I've now upskilled 3 of my direct reports to actually build their analytical capabilities as well and help us with, so we deliver board reporting and that's 18 individual reports. So we have to do a consolidated report across the whole portfolio and then a 4 to 5 page board report on every single facility that goes deep into hiring, demographics, sourcing effectiveness, and a few other analytics that we do. So it is absolutely pivotal to us. us. And every month we are going very deep into the trenches around all thing analytics, and we couldn't do it without the LiveHire analytics module.
Fantastic. With so much data available and so many stories that you could tell, how do you decide which analytics you focus on?
Yeah, and I have to say, when I first started working with LiveHire 12 months ago, I was quite overwhelmed by the amount of data that the product can actually produce. And you really do need to decipher which graph and which trend line and which part I will use. But for me, it really starts with the end customer. So who is my audience? And when you're doing board reports, it's very high level, it's very in sync, it's a lot of dot points and then following up with graphs. But holistically, what we grab is we download a current vacancy report. So I have a vacancy report that flows through every Monday. So we obviously do, at the time of reporting here, all our open vacancies. And then the next thing after that is, from a financial year perspective, what's our total hires? So that's very easy to go into the hiring. So go straight into the hiring insights, select your financial year, and then just start to use all the analytics. So we use obviously total hires, we use average time for an applicant to be hired, average time for a position to be filled. We then go obviously into our sourcing channels, we go into our gender, we then go over into our demographics, and I want to know about our peak hiring months and our job boards. How are we going with our referral channel? Because that's an internal strategic talent pipeline for us, is how we increasing our referrals. And by using this data, we've actually shown we've gone from 5% to, on average, 19% over all of our hires are actually coming from our referral base, our employee base, which is fantastic. Then we also have the gender piece, where we flip it on the other side, where we have majority females that we hire, but we're actually targeting more males and those folk that are unidentified gender. And we actually track from a gender diversity of how we're tracking with that. We then split that down into our portfolio regions, so Queensland, New South Wales and South Australia, and we do an overlay of how are we hiring and our operational effectiveness in each of those regions. And then I love going into the demographics, because LiveHire is the first ATS that I've worked on that actually breaks down the demographics of our hires. And what has come out of that is we've been able to have a look at our average age of hires. So, there is this sort of perception that aged care does hire older people, and we've absolutely demystified or debunked that. And nearly 50% of all of our hires year to date are from the age of 18 to 24. So just by running the demographics insights out of LiveHire, we'll be able to determine, oh, we actually are hiring the next generation of carers and chefs and admin and lifestyle and maintenance, but we actually had no emerging market strategy or no youth employment strategy. So by using the different insights that we could get, it actually is now deciding what strategies we need to be looking for. So yeah, everything over the normal transactional, mechanical, how many people, where are they coming from, and time to fill. We've now been able to diversify into the sourcing insights and the demographic insights as well, and put that in our board reports, which the end audience is really liking that more holistic approach to all things talent.
Fantastic. Some great examples there, how you've used analytics to actually change the way that you do your recruitment. How do you use analytics to measure the performance of your own team and share their success?
Yeah, great question. Like it's one thing to have that functional, helicopter view, but what I'm also really passionate about is the professionals that are in my team, you know, they want that line of sight, and they want that Northern Star of how they can get better as well. So the analytics you can delve into by recruiter, and instantly all the data changes and all the analytics change. So I can actually sit in my one-on-ones on a fortnightly basis and talk to my recruiters about, you know, what their volume has been, where the bottlenecks are, what the challenges are, where the wins are, and actually frame a completely different conversation around employee-led development plans and, you know, goal setting. And, you know, I thought I was really good here, but I'm actually much better over there. And, you know, it's really looking at, as they use the source by hires, as they use the hiring conversions, you know, it just evokes a different conversation around, you know, instead of having a 60-70% hiring conversion, most of our conversions are in the 90 percentiles now. And for me as a leader over my talent team, that's a really meaningful conversation, because it means that the conversations that they're having through the screening process, the interviewing process, the pre-employment checking process, the formal offer process, they're having really meaningful conversations that people want to come and work for us. So then when we then go and issue formal letter of contracts, we're actually getting that hiring conversion through. So, you know, by using all of these stats and then showcasing how these stats can tell very different stories, I'm actually watching my team put their hand up for growth opportunities and stretch assignments that they probably wouldn't have done 12 months ago. And also too, I think that the next generation of recruiters are coming through. You know, there's so much tech out there, and there's so much AI that probably, you know, that streamlines a lot of processes. But then it's about, they want to know how the data actually shows that what their performance is like as well, and to see that being a talent professional is actually a profession, is a career, and how you can influence your hiring leaders to go, hey, you know, we've been able to optimize this sourcing channel in our talent pools or our referrals. And the benefit that has been for operations is we're actually increasing our referral hires to 19%. And that then has a knock-on effect to our employee engagement and, you know, our connectivity with our employees. And it just has a more holistic way of you know, building up the talent professionals, but also how they then go off and have different conversations with candidates, hiring leaders, you know, and employee colleagues as well. So I think that's really, really important for them to be in control and in the driver's seats of their career, and how analytics and data and having those regular conversations about goal setting and development and stretch assignments of working in different parts of the business, different disciplines, really makes them engaged as being a TA professional.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. I feel like I could talk data with you all day. You're doing so many.
We love data.
Doing so many amazing things, and I can see how you have been nominated for the Internal Talent Awards tonight. So I wanted to wish you all the best with those.
Thank you.
Thank you. It was a quick finish with the editing there. I think Katie is probably on a plane right now traveling to Melbourne. Yeah, I find her really inspiring and really passionate, not just about reporting, but about talent acquisition generally. And I think most of us would agree to there's probably not many more challenging areas than aged care to try and find candidates, and probably not many more important challenges as well that need to be met to enable aged care in future. That's all from the LiveHire analytics piece, but I was going to hand over to Karen to open up the webinar for questions.
Thanks so much for that, Jared. Our prize giveaways are going well. Vanessa, Georgia and Linda have already been told they're a winner, and they will receive those vouchers by email today. I've got 3 more to give away, so I will come back to you with those as we go through. Now, let me see. Now's the time for you to ask questions of Kevin or Jared. Let me see. Sorry, guys. Oh, here we go. From Elena. This one's for Kevin. What metrics would you say work best within a devolved recruitment function when hiring managers do the majority of the process?
I assume, I'm not sure, but I assume that recruiters are still presenting candidates. If that's the case, then I would say the time to present is the key metric in that case. The faster you can present good candidates to the hiring manager, the better off you are. I'm not sure if that's the case or not. If the hiring manager is doing their own sourcing, then I'm not sure. I don't know what role recruiting is playing. So, yeah, assuming recruiting is presenting candidates, then time to present would be the gold metric.
Thanks, Kevin. How do you track diversity? Do you find some people don't want to answer certain questions? For you, Kevin?
Yeah, I mean, that's always the case. It's generally self-reported diversity hiring. So that's all you can really do is to use the self-reported data that candidates have given you. But even then, there should be in your marketing messaging and other things, there should be an opportunity to encourage people to tell you if they're diverse or not. And certain categories, for example, we're talking about female versus male or whatever, that's obviously that's more identifiable and could be determined relatively objectively. It'll maybe never be 100%, but it can be better.
Okay. Carol's asking if we can do a quick demo on how to view the age demographics as a chart in LiveHire Analytics. We'll come back to you offline with that, Carol. Someone will contact you about that and give you a look. Another one for Kevin. Would you agree that staff retention is also a good metric for quality of hire?
No, I would not. And it's really simple. I don't believe recruiting has any or very little control over whether someone leaves the company or not. Whether somebody leaves your organization is because of the hiring manager, because of the economy, because of the company's circumstances, because of their role in the company. The only time it would ever rely on recruiting at all, and even then it's not really recruiting's responsibility if the candidate was a mismatch for the position. And in that case, that was really the hiring manager had made a bad decision. So, I really think that is got nothing to do with recruiting, and I always reject that one as a measure for recruiting.
Yeah, good point. Good question, Ali. I've awarded you a prize for that. I'll email you the voucher. We are working to implement agile recruiting, meaning we have a week of sourcing before presenting to get a good scope of the market. Would you suggest that isn't a good way to start the process?
Well, it's a good way to have that data, but it should have been done ahead of time. It shouldn't be done after you got the requisition. If you're really on top of things, you know what's going to be coming, or you should have an idea of what is going to be coming, what skills are going to be needed, what kind of positions are really hot right now in your company, and you should have already pre-sourced for those roles and have people warm at least, or know where they are, or can connect with those people. And that goes back to that talent pool, talent community that I talked about. So I think if you're doing it after there, you've got the rec, you're putting the cart in front of the horse.
Thanks, Kevin. Here's one for probably both of you from Robert. Measuring performance against benchmarks. Which benchmark standard do you recommend, and can these be built in LiveHire as a measure? So you go first, Kevin, and then I'll pass over to Jared or Mal.
You're hitting all my hot buttons here. I don't believe we can. I don't believe we can measure performance very effectively. Okay, that's what I just talked about before and earlier in the presentation. I think trying to measure performance is like trying to measure I don't know the quality of the weather. It's all of your opinion. Okay, if we have good data, if we have very solid correlated data that people with this kind of a background, this person with these skills is a better performer than somebody that doesn't have those skills, and maybe LiveHire can help to do that, then that would be an okay score. But the way it's done today is, in my opinion, way too subjective and not very reliant on good data.
Do you want to say anything, Jared?
Yes, sorry, Karen. On the LiveHire side, we do have a benchmark dashboard. in analytics. It's the last dashboard, which will compare you as a client against average LiveHire clients. So there's different performance metrics in there, but you can see clearly how you're shaping up.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for that, Robert. You get a prize for that great question. I'll email it through to you. Okay, we've got Samara next with your top 3 most common metrics. These tend to be the most understood and familiar figures to executive and senior leaders. How do you go about incorporating the new metrics into the regular reporting and ingrained data literacy at that level? Kevin?
I can virtually guarantee you that if you present metrics that I presented today to the board and tell them why you're not presenting the old traditional ones, they will get up and applaud you. All right. They will be so happy to have a metric that actually makes sense and is actionable that they will be very happy to hear that. The only reason the board expects these metrics is because we've trained them to expect them, and that's all we ever give them. All right. And that's because they're easy for us to get and easy for us to measure. So, to be quite honest with you, I think if you present any of those metrics that I presented today, they will be really, really happy.
Perfect. Thank you, Kevin. Here's one from Olivia. What's your opinion on psychometric skills testing pre-employment?
Well, I'm not an IO psychologist. I can't present to presume to know. I'll say this. I know there are ones that are highly valid and correlate very well with long-term success. Okay. Things like general ability tests, specific skill tests for coding and so forth. They're highly reliable and good. But general psychometric testing, I don't really have a good opinion on that, and you'd have to talk to somebody who's trained as a psychologist to answer that.
Okay, thank you, Kevin. Here's one from Nick. Can you recommend a source for benchmarking your data versus others? I know Jared has a good answer for that one, but we'll see what Kevin says.
I don't like benchmarks, so let go to Jared.
Yeah, I think, do we need to cover that? I think, yeah, there is a dashboard there with some benchmark data against other clients if you want to see how you're shaping up.
Okay.
I will say as a caveat that I understand the desire to know how you compare to other people, but I'm not sure you're comparing apples to apples. And that's the problem. When you look at these figures, you're probably comparing apples to bananas and oranges, okay? And then you go back and say, oh, we're great or we're not great, but you may not be. So, I just don't really think benchmark data makes much sense. Again, it all goes back to how well that data is defined and measured in the organization that is reporting it. And in my experience, I've filled out many benchmark surveys in my life, and believe me, there's a lot of fudging.
Okay, well, Nick, thank you for that question. I made you a winner. You'll receive your voucher via email. Follow-up question. What's your opinion on gaining references before an offer versus after an offer, Kevin? Can
you repeat that one more time? I missed that.
Sorry, what's your opinion on gaining references before an offer versus after an offer?
If they're done in the traditional way, which is just asking the candidate to recommend a few people to talk to, I think they're close to zero in usefulness. All right. If you use something like XREF or some of the other tools out there that try to do it in a more scientific way, there might be some minor value in it, but I'm not a huge fan of that. Again, I understand the desire to get opinions from other people, and I know that if people give you really honest opinions, it's good, but you don't get honest opinions. You get opinions from what people think you want to hear. It's very hard to get really objective, honest data, and that's why that's a weak measure. Okay.
Perfect. Okay. Yes, this lady says, I couldn't agree more, and it's a battle with the executives to explain that. One last one, because we're right on time, from Camille. How do you measure recruiter performance, and what key metrics are most important for our success?
I think I'd go very simply use the same ones I talked about before. If you're as a recruiter presenting to the hiring manager, how quickly did you present them? How did the hiring manager accept those and interview and hire those people? So to me, that's recruiter performance, and it can be measured recruiter by recruiter, right? And if you have, if you have five openings and 5 hiring managers, how well did you do? And how quickly did you present to those managers? How well were they received? How many people after you presented them actually got an offer and got hired? I think it's really straightforward how you can measure recruiter performance. It's really not difficult at all.
Perfect. Thanks very much, Kevin. Well, that's us at time. I just wanted to say a special thank you to our audience for giving up an hour of their time to join us. I hope you got a lot out of it. I know I did. Extra special thank you to Kevin for joining us in his evening. So thanks, Kevin. It was a great presentation. We really enjoyed it. And thank you. And thank you, Jared, for all your interviewing technique with the lovely Katie, and for Mal, who's been answering questions in the background for us. We really appreciate that too. So hope everyone has a great day. Don't forget to take time to answer our survey at the end, and we'll see you at our next webinar, which is on recruitment marketing. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.